This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. I want to open today with an excerpt from a book titled Maximize Your Potential, talking about growing your expertise and taking bold risks. Number 1, place many bets. And here's the excerpt that I want to read. If it is difficult to predict just what exactly is going to be successful, it follows that you have to keep trying. The more times you try, the more likely that you will create successful designs, startups, or pieces of art. If we look at the most successful innovators throughout history, we find that they have all been stunningly productive. They keep trying over and over again. Pablo Picasso created somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 works of art in his lifetime. He did not have the ability to simply decide that any given piece of art was going to become a masterpiece. Instead, he set himself up for great success by rolling the dice over and over. Many of his canvases have collected dust in cellars around the world, and with good reason. They sucked. Picasso could not predict with any certainty which of his pieces would become celebrated and which would be recycled. He was, in essence, placing a bet that a percentage of his work would take hold. It therefore follows that Picasso's output gave him an incredible edge in becoming successful. End quote. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the trend following way. You wake up each year, January, beginning of the year, you've got your tracking portfolio. You do not know what market is going to take off. You don't have a clue. You can't know. You just have to wait. You have to try. When the breakout signal happens, when the moving average signal happens, with whatever technical indicator that you're using consistently, when it hits, you're in. And if it doesn't go your way and it hits your stop, you get out. With that big overview, let me tell you about my week and my experiences so far. I'm in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and I head to Singapore in the next few days. Siem Reap is home of some of the most fabulous temple complexes on the planet. Angkor Wat, which to me looks like it was probably Versailles in the 12th century. Bayon, another temple complex in Siem Reap. Fantastic Buddha images on these sculptures that are just amazing. And to think they've been that way for 800-900 years, you just imagine what did it look like back in the day. And I hope I pronounced this right. The third temple complex I visited was called Tapram. And this is the one where you've seen the famous images probably in one of the Indiana Jones films, one of the Lara Croft films, and it's where the trees are growing up out of the temple. It's just, to see it in person, it's just wild because it tells you that there was this fantastic complex that had been lost. It had been massive, ornate. The detail is just amazing. I mean, nearly 1,000 years later, covered in Cambodian jungle. And the smiling faces and the sculpture, it's phenomenal. It's the lost city. And you see this and you say to yourself, wow. The men that imagined these complexes, the adventure in their minds, the scale, the majesty, the risk that it took, the largesse, the boldness, the audacious. Somebody was seeing big. They wanted to live large. They weren't sitting around. And I'm not trying to say that all of the people back in the day of 12th century, 11th century of Cambodia were all living large. Far from it. That's not my point. It's that somebody Somebody at that point in time was saying, let's make something big. Let's make something memorable. And they did it in a huge way. That's the first part of what I want to fixate on. Living large. There's an epidemic, a virus, a lethal pathogen that is affecting large segments of populations all across the world. And this pathogen is convincing people that they're emasculated, worthless blobs of flesh, incapable of caring for themselves. And the only thing they can do is to turn on the TV and watch news programs and listen to debates. And then, if they are in a country where voting makes a difference, perhaps their vote will get more of the goodies coming their way. This is the way that many people live today. They don't think about starting a kingdom. They don't think about building this grandiose palace. And look, not everyone has the resources of the Cambodian king 1,000 years ago. That's not my point. My point is that what you have in your lot in life, you have to go for it. You have to keep trying. That's the whole point of the Picasso quote. Go for it. Keep trying. They're not all going to work out. That's trend following too. It's not all going to work out. You're going to place bets. You're going to have losses. This world that we've gotten into where there are no losses. Of course there's losses, but this political propaganda that's tossed across the populace, trying to convince everybody that they'll take care of you, that you'll be okay, and you no longer have to do anything to take care of yourself. You don't have to think even. Just keep eating in America. Just keep eating at KFC, Burger King, shopping at Walmart grocery stores, and eating ho-hos all day long. And now you've got healthcare to take care of you. So for me, wandering around the ruins of ancient civilizations puts into perspective the grandiose nature in which the men and women that built these complexes were thinking. It's just awesome. And I will have to say that I don't know for sure what the involvement of women were, but the tour guide that I had made sure to point out to me the relief carvings of the king surrounded by concubines that just went on these reliefs by the thousands. And they really were carving these nicely. These were, you could tell these were really attractive women. And the tour guide told me that the king back in the day, if you didn't have 1,000 concubines, you weren't worth your weight in gold as a king. I don't know what I would do with 1,000 concubines. I guess if you didn't have to work, you could somehow or another take care of business, but that seems like a hell of a job. Anyways, let me move on. Maybe the concubines was part of the problem ultimately, because for all of that grandeur, all of what this must have looked like back in the day, it all fell down. It came down. It ended. It ended. What goes up comes down. Now, right now in America, we have things like Priceline and Tesla and Amazon and Facebook and Twitter. They all seem to be going up. It does remind me a lot of the late 90s. And maybe today people say, well, this has nothing to do with the late 90s. This is just a few companies. Someone would have to do the research, but here's where I might beg to differ. I remember when Netscape went public and it hit $1 billion market cap, and that was a big deal. I'm wondering if the market cap of the 5 or 6 stocks that I just mentioned exceed the value of most of the dot-com crap from the late 90s. Meaning, are we in the same kind of dot-com bubble that we were in the late 90s? It's just concentrated in a handful of stocks. Now, of course, are we in a bubble? I don't know the answer to that. I just know that bubbles in grandeur end. Once again, back to the Picasso quote I read at the beginning. You don't know. You can place your bet. But if you're long Tesla, if you're long Amazon, if you're long Facebook, if you're long Twitter, and you don't have an exit strategy, are you going to average down when it starts to drop? Because it will start to drop. They all drop. Nothing goes up forever. Hence my interesting experience of being at the Angkor Wat Temple complex. Nothing goes up forever. So when you think about this idea that nothing goes up forever, whether it's Angkor Wat in Cambodia, whether it's Priceline, Tesla, Google, and if I think back to Picasso's way of doing things, the idea is to have a timeless strategy. A timeless strategy requires flexibility. From the very beginning, your strategy is flexible. You're going to adjust what happens when one market dries up. You're one of these guys, you sit out there, maybe you day trade or some kind of other trading, and it's just focusing on one market. All of a sudden, that market is not delivering. Was your strategy adaptable from the outset, that you could switch from trading Tesla to coffee to gold and Swiss francs? Could you trade all of those markets the exact same way and not know a damn thing about the cars that Tesla makes, or what's going on in South American coffee, or what's going on in Aussie gold mines, or what's going on in the Alps? So if you have no clue about any of that, can you find a strategy that's adaptable from the beginning? And it's back to the Picasso way. The strategy really starts with you have to place your bets. Place those bets and have a strategy for exiting if they don't work. What happens when volatility expands? When things really get rough? Do you trade the exact same way? I could do literally weeks. People would probably get bored, but I think those that know why I say this, but we could talk for weeks about volatility expanding and contracting and how that affects the position sizing of your trading, how it should affect the position sizing of your trading. It definitely does. Now, you might not know about it. You might not prepare for it, but you can bet the best of the best do. And if you hear me say this now and you don't know about it, ask questions. Drop me an email. This is the kind of thinking. It's the digging. It's the digging into strategies, whether it's a civilization, whether it's a trading strategy, whether it's art. In Picasso's instance, what's your strategy? A little update on the rest of my year. I will be leaving Asia in December. I'll be back in the new year, probably February, maybe early March at the latest. I will be heading out of Asia in early December. I will be stopping in Zurich for nearly a week, headed into the Washington, D.C. area, and will be visiting the West Coast also in January. I look forward to catching up with everybody that I've not seen in a long while. But I must tell you, if I'm going to be a trend-following trader, if I'm going to continue to help other people, this vantage of being a nomad, this vantage of being on the road, this vantage of seeing different cultures, I think this perspective helps people. I think it helps people to give them a flavor, a consistency, a vision, a vantage that they don't see in their everyday life. Things don't really change because everything changes. That's the key. Change is constant. And if you know change is constant, what's your strategy for adapting? You figure that out, you got life figured out.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.